All right, so today we're diving into something kind of unique.
Mm-hmm.
Something I know you had some questions about.
Yeah.
Vintage Johnson Matthey. 1 gram silver bars.
Okay.
We're going to try to unpack why these little tiny pieces of silver
Right.
can be worth sometimes significantly more than just the price of the silver itself.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've been looking into what makes these specific bars really stand out
Yeah.
to collectors and investors.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it highlights how value can be shaped by so many factors
Yeah,
beyond just the raw material itself.
totally. Okay, so let's start, I guess, at the beginning with Johnson Matthey.
Sure.
That name, that name carries a lot of weight in the world of precious metals.
Yeah.
What is it at the core of that reputation that kind of gives them that?
Well, a big part of the premium you see on these bars
Okay.
comes from Johnson Matthey's long history and reputation in the precious metals refining world.
Right.
For decades, their gold and silver bars have been known for exceptional purity,
Yeah.
and they've always had these really strict production standards.
That JM stamp basically became a symbol of you can rely on this.
Totally.
Like, this is a trustworthy thing, and it's something that collectors and investors really value.
Okay.
It's a mark of quality.
So JM's history, in a way, kind of creates that desirability.
Exactly. That trust
Yeah. Okay.
directly fuels the demand for their products.
Interesting. Okay.
And here's where this story gets a little more interesting.
Okay.
JM doesn't actually refine bullion anymore.
Right.
So how do you think that impacts the value of these older bars?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's kind of the key to that whole vintage appeal.
Yeah.
Because they've stopped refining bullion.
Right.
The supply of any JM bar is limited.
Exactly.
So you've got limited supply, and then you've got this sort of lasting demand,
That's it.
which drives up the value.
You got it. And then on top of that scarcity, you have certain vintage JM bars,
Okay.
particularly ones with, unique designs or serial numbers,
Yeah.
become even more collectible.
It adds this layer of individuality and a connection to a specific point in time.
Right, like a historical context.
Exactly. Someone might be looking for a bar from a particular year or era,
Totally.
which makes those specific bars even more valuable.
That makes sense now, these 1 gram bars.
Yeah.
We always think of silver investing as these big, huge bars.
Right, right.
What makes these tiny ones so interesting to collectors?
That's a great point.
Right.
While JM did produce the larger bars,
Mm-hmm.
the 1 gram size was actually produced in much smaller quantities.
Okay.
And this relative scarcity,
Yeah.
compared to the more common larger bars, actually makes them more collectible.
Okay.
A serious collector might have different sizes of JM bars.
Right.
But that rare 1 gram bar becomes kind of a crown jewel,
Yeah.
completing the collection.
The missing piece.
Exactly. There's a historical value attached to these smaller vintage bars.
Right.
Simply because there's just not that many of them around.
So at the end of the day, we're still talking about 0.999 fine silver.
Right,
So
absolutely.
there's that inherent precious metal value.
Yes, regardless of their collectability.
Okay.
These bars are made of very pure silver.
Yeah.
And silver itself is a valuable investment metal.
Right.
So that underlying worth is always there.
Sure.
But with these vintage JM 1 gram bars, the real excitement comes from the premium
Okay.
they command on top of the silver's melt value.
Got it. So the value of the silver itself is just the base.
Exactly.
And then everything else on top of it is what's interesting.
Precisely.
How big can these premiums actually get?
Oh, they can get quite substantial.
Wow. Okay.
Collectors who are after rare vintage bullion,
Yeah.
especially from a reputable refiner like Johnson Matthey,
Mhm.
are often happy to pay well above the current silver price.
Wow.
And certain things can make a bar even more desirable.
Like what?
For example, early production methods, like if they were hand-poured,
Like
or
the-
older cast designs, those can be more appealing to collectors.
Interesting, because it's from a different era.
Exactly.
Okay. It sounds like there's a whole community out there that really appreciates these things.
Absolutely. The silver stacking and collecting communities,
Okay.
they really value Johnson Matthey bars,
Yeah.
especially the vintage ones.
Okay.
There's a real appreciation for the brand's history and the consistent quality of their products.
I see.
And because the supply of these vintage bars is limited and demand remains strong,
Yeah.
their prices often go way beyond what you'd expect for a standard 1 gram bar.
Okay. So it's that combination of history and brand recognition
Yeah,
that's driving the demand.
exactly.
All right. So say somebody's got one of these bars.
Okay.
What are they looking for to figure out what they have?
Well, the front of the bar is where you'll find most of the key information.
Okay.
You're going to see the JM logo.
Okay.
Those letters, JM, with the crossed hammers, it's
Yeah.
very distinctive.
Yeah.
And the bar should also have its weight and purity engraved on it.
Usually you'll see 1 gram, 0.999 fine silver.
Okay.
But here's a really important detail. Many vintage JM 1 gram bars will have a serial number.
Right. Okay.
That serial number is a big clue that it's a vintage piece,
Gotcha.
and it can potentially help trace its history.
Okay, so what about the back of the bar?
The back can provide some additional information.
Yeah.
The designs weren't always the same,
Right.
Some are plain, some have a repeating JM logo pattern,
Okay.
and some even have what's called the waffle pattern.
A waffle pattern.
Yeah, a less common or more intricate back design,
Okay.
like the repeating logo or that waffle pattern,
Right.
can sometimes make a bar more collectible.
Interesting. So it could increase the value?
It could.
What about the edges of the bar? Are those smooth or are they...
Yeah, you have smooth edges and then what are called reeded edges,
Okay.
which are grooved.
Okay.
Well, the edge detail isn't as important as the design or serial number.
Yeah.
For these small bars, it can still help with identification.
And potentially narrow down when it was produced.
So are we talking about the original packaging?
Oh, yeah. The packaging and the condition of the bar definitely matter.
Okay.
A bar that's still in its original Johnson Matthey assay packaging
Yeah.
is generally more desirable to collectors.
Right. Makes sense.
It just adds to its authenticity.
Okay.
The condition of the bar itself is also important.
Sure.
Toning, that natural patina that silver gets over time,
Right.
can actually be a good thing for collectors.
Interesting.
But significant wear or damage will decrease its value.
Of course, now we had a listener write in with a specific serial number,
Okay.
F0964.
All right.
What can you tell us about a Johnson Matthey 1 gram, 0.99 fine silver bar with that serial number?
Well, based on what we know, a Johnson Matthey 1 gram .999 fine silver bar with the serial number F0964 is most likely a vintage bar.
Okay.
With a serial number like that. It's definitely going to be more collectible than a modern bar without one.
Okay.
And that F prefix in the serial number is particularly interesting.
Go ahead.
It suggests that this bar came from a specific production batch, probably sometime in the 1980s or 1990s.
Gotcha.
Which is when JM was really active in bullion production.
So the F is a clue about when it was made.
Exactly. We might not have the exact production records,
Right.
but these prefix letters often pointed to specific production periods or batches from the refiner. And the fact that it's a 1 gram bar adds to its potential rarity. Because remember, they made fewer of these smaller ones compared to the larger bars.
Interesting.
And since Johnson Matthey isn't making bullion anymore,
Yeah.
this vintage bar will automatically have a collector's premium.
Okay.
If this bar with the serial number F0964 also has a repeating JM logo or another unique pattern on the back, that could make it even more valuable to collectors. It's often these little details that make one bar more desirable than another.
So to put this into perspective for our listener,
Sure.
what kind of price difference are we talking about here?
Okay, so let's say you have a standard generic 1 gram silver bar.
Yeah.
Its value would be based purely on the current silver price.
The spot price.
The spot price. And that would probably put it somewhere between $1 and $2.
Okay.
But when we look at a rare vintage Johnson Matthey 1 gram bar, especially one with a serial number like F0964, and maybe some unique design features, the value can jump significantly.
Wow.
These bars often sell for $50 to $150.
Wow.
Or even more, depending on their condition, how much demand there is.
Okay.
And those specific design elements.
That's a huge difference.
It is.
It's amazing.
It really shows you that people are willing to pay a premium for more than just the silver itself.
Yeah, for the history and all of that.
Exactly. It's the history. It's the reputation of the refiner. It's the scarcity of these bars and the enthusiasm of collectors who appreciate these little pieces of precious metal history.
It's pretty cool. So it's not just a small piece of silver.
No.
It's a story.
It is. It's a fascinating combination of investing in precious metals and the world of collecting.
That's really neat.
Where things like brand heritage and rarity can really drive up value.
So it makes you wonder, if these seemingly ordinary silver dars can have this hidden value, what other objects around us might be worth more than we think?
That's a great question.
Yeah. It might be time to take a closer look at the things we think are just ordinary.
It's like a treasure hunt right in our own homes.
Exactly.
You never know what you might find.
Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You can find more episodes wherever you get your podcasts.